Alright guys, welcome to video number 2 of Nyjah Huston Week. Today, we're going to be learning how to backside flip from Nyjah Huston. This is a trick that I've always thought looks super cool. I remember when I was small, I remember seeing Paul Rodriguez and Eric Costin do backside flips, and for some reason, they just always stuck out in my mind the way that they could flick it and catch it and like turn it. I always thought this was like one of the coolest tricks in skateboarding, and as time's gone on, as I've gotten back into skateboarding, this is a trick that I can do, but I always do sketchy, and it's not like on lock or a trick that I have consistently by any means. It's kind of like a flick and pray kind of situation. So today we're going to be looking at Nyjah Huston's technique, breaking down the footage to try and figure out what his keys to success are with backside flips, because this is a trick that Nyjah Huston has on lock, and I can't wait to break down his technique, figure out what makes him a successful backside flipper, and then try to apply that technique in today's session to fix my backside flips so that I can start doing them up, off, and everywhere that I want to, and really unlock backside flips for good. So first thing we got to do is just get warmed up, and then we'll get into Nyjah Huston's backside flip technique. If you like these videos, go ahead and subscribe, but let's get some clips. Okay, so we got a good warm up. It's time to break down Nyjah Huston's backside flip technique. So the first thing that I noticed is his foot positioning. Now he puts his back foot with his toes a little bit kind of in that pocket there. So it's not the same foot positioning on his back foot as it would be for like an ollie or a kickflip. He kind of slides his foot a little bit more to the toe edge. The front foot, however, looks pretty much exactly the same as a kickflip would be. For Nyjah Huston, that means that he's putting his foot just below the bolts and he's hanging off his heel big time. So I've watched this trick tip from Nyjah Huston like over and over again, and one thing I found interesting is how little he mentions flipping the board. I think he maybe mentions the flick of the trick like once. The whole trick tip, he's talking about rotating the shoulder. So I feel like that tells you something, that this trick is more about the shoulders than it is the kickflip. So the first thing that I noticed is his wind up. So as he crouches down, you'll see his shoulders start to wind all the way until he reaches the bottom of his crouch. And at that moment, as he starts to stand back up or jump up, as his legs start to push, that's when his shoulders start rotating the backside flip. And you can see from this footage how much his shoulders actually rotate before his tail even touches the ground. So this reminds me a lot of Chris Joslin. If you saw, I recently made a video of Chris Joslin teaching me how to backside big spin, and I actually got to talk to Chris in person, and he said his tip for back big spin was to break up the trick into 2 separate tricks. Think of the back 180 and the pop shove it separately, and that's what this reminds me of with this backside flip from Nyjah Huston. You see his shoulders really start to get the motion of the 180 before he ever starts to pop a kickflip. Today I think what's gonna help me roll up back 180 and then kickflip and then finish the back 180. So that, I don't know if that makes sense to you. That's just kind of how my brain operates. Now when you watch Nyjah Huston flick, you'll notice that he keeps his hips open all the way through the flick, so his shoulders are rotated way past where his hips are when he's actually flicking off the board. If his hips were actually in line with his shoulders, this would cause him to flick through the middle of the nose and turn it into some kind of like back 180, or just kind of ruin the flick. And I think this is a major key. Obviously, I'm not an expert of like back 180s. I can barely do them and they never look good. But I think that this is my problem. With the backside flip, you kind of need to rotate your shoulders and your hips separately. That way you can get the flick with your legs off the corner of the board before your hips start to get pulled around in the back 180. So for me at least, that's gonna be the main thing that I'm focusing on, is closing my shoulders but kind of delaying the rotation with my hips. So just like with the back big spin, we're gonna break this down into chunks. The first thing we're gonna do is just backside 180 the hip, and then we're gonna try to backside flip it. Once we do the hip, we're gonna do the same thing on the bump, and then the same thing on the step up. And then hopefully, if everything goes well, I wanna try this off the little mani pad, because I would like to be able to do tricks off drops, but I'm kind of scared of it. So doing a backside flip off of a drop would be like a huge step forward for me. But yeah, there's nothing to it but to do it, I guess. So let's try and do some backside flips like Nyjah Huston. You. So if you're gonna try it, obviously everybody's different, but this was just my experience. Try and practice winding up your shoulders as you go down into your crouch, and then as you start to stand back up, that's when your shoulders start to rotate. Then from there, rotate your shoulders, but then leave your hips a little bit open, so that way you can actually get the proper flick off the corner of the nose. And then if you did the winding part and then rotate into it, the trick kind of naturally just happens, and you kind of just are there for the ride, waiting for the board to flip around. The other thing that, I don't know if this is just me, but I had this problem with back big spins as well, and I have this problem with tray flips. I guess it's just a problem in general, but I really like to dip my head in. Like when I crouch down and I'm about to pop a trick, I really like lean onto my toes and let my head kind of like move forward as I'm coming up to pop the trick, and this will ruin everything. So if you have this problem, maybe you don't know, but you can film yourself and just see if your head is coming like way over the toe edge of the board. One thing that might help you is just trying to keep your head more above the board. So it's not gonna be exactly above the board, but for me, if I try and just think like keep your head above the board as you rotate, so it's kind of like you stay straight as you crouch, so you don't like super lean in on your toe side. You keep the weight directly over the board as much as you can, and then while staying over the board, do the rotation. That helps you stay lined up so that the flip can come around, you can catch it and land. One thing I really like about Nyjah Huston's backside flips is he doesn't pivot them. Like maybe sometimes he does, but he normally lands like pretty just like bolts. And I think that's the right way to do backside flips. Obviously, I think he could pivot them if he wanted to. It's a lot harder though to land bolts. And by copying Nyjah Huston's technique, I was able to really get my shoulders fully rotated, which is really surprising because a lot of times when I do land handstand backside flips, they're under rotated, and then I kind of have to try and like skirt the last 180. Whereas by applying his technique of like crouching down with my shoulders open and then like staying really vertical and rotating my shoulders and leaving those hips open, I was able to rotate pretty much like the full 180. And yes, like I did under rotate a little bit, but I was rotated enough that I didn't need to like slide half the 180, if that makes sense. Really hyped on this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope it wasn't boring for you. I like to go like really in depth with what's going on with the pro's technique because I genuinely think that it helps me progress at skating. And today's one of those days where it was just a good session. Like I feel super blessed that it all worked out the way that it did. And so hopefully in a few months we'll be backside flipping up the step up every time, no problem. Shout out to Nyjah Huston. I would suggest going and watching his X Games trick tip and doing the same thing. Like I said, just break it down for yourself. Look at what you're doing, look at what he's doing, see kind of where you're coming up short. Anyways, thank you again guys for watching. I hope you're enjoying Nyjah Huston week. Tune in again tomorrow for another video about Nyjah Huston, and let me know what kind of videos you want to see about Nyjah Huston or what other pros you would like me to dedicate a week to making videos about. But that's pretty much it guys. Make every single day a Friday. Subscribe if you like these videos, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.